almost every scenario that plays out will be better than worst case. So 4% rule, you're designing a plan for underspending and you're going to miss out on the retirement that you could have had, because as your portfolio grows, you're not taking advantage of that growth and that additional spending capacity. Without a plan, you're just guessing at what you can spend. And the natural default for savers is, well, when I get to retirement, I'm just not going to spend money. That plan has a 100% success rate if you define success as not running out of money, right? But you're going to be leaving behind potentially millions of dollars and you're missing out on the retirement that you could have had.
Welcome to Catching Up to FI, a podcast on mindset, money, and life for late starters of any age on their journey to financial independence. I'm Bill, and I'm a late starter.
I'm Jackie, and I'm also a late starter, and we're your host. We're here to help you on your journey to financial independence, no matter where you're starting.
We're going to talk to experts, other late starters, and explore topics related to our mission.
Join us as we catch up to FI together.
Hello, and welcome back to Catching Up to FI. I'm Bill Yount with Jackie Cummins-Koski, and today we're talking about giving, and more giving. Go ahead, Jack. Lead us in.
That's right. How you doing, Bill? So imagine being able to watch your money change your family's life in real time. So not after you're gone, not buried in estate documents, but right now. So today we're talking about gifting to family and others in your life. We'll talk about the tax rules, some creative strategies, and some really bright ideas that you don't want to miss.
Yeah, we're joined by Allen Mueller. He's a CFA and CFP, so he's highly educated. I think he has an MBA too. He's a professional with deep expertise in wealth management, financial planning, and the bigger questions surrounding money and legacy. One of the themes we explore often on the show is that financial independence isn't just about accumulating wealth. It's about using your money intentionally to transfer wealth to the people that matter most. That naturally leads in today's topic, intergenerational wealth transfer, even in tax-efficient ways. This is an important conversation for anyone thinking about children, grandchildren, charitable giving, or the long-term impact of their wealth. So, Allen, welcome to Catching Up to FI.
Hey, thank you guys. A big fan of the podcast, so super honored to be here, as you already mentioned. My name is Allen Mueller. I run 7 Saturdays Financial. It's a financial planning firm based in Dallas, Texas. We operate on a flat fee basis. And what we do is retirement income planning, tax strategy, and we actually specialize in turning lifelong savers into confident spenders.
Yeah, that's awesome, because we have a lot of fire people out there that are struggling with building that muscle of spending. So that's a great way to look at it. Because as soon as I hit FI, I was like, okay, now that I put my oxygen mask on, what can I do? I'm still working, so it gives me even more leverage to help my kids or help others or charities. And today's conversation is going to give you all the tips, tricks, and standard ideas that we have. But let's roll back here, because you didn't start life as a financial planner. And there's a lot of people that are in job transitions to this. Take us through how you found your way to it.
Yeah, it was a very long and winding path. Financial planning is actually my third career. So I started out in engineering and did that for a few years. Did various jobs in engineering, mostly at energy companies, mining companies. I went back to school and got a part-time MBA. And through that process, I got very interested in finance and accounting and economics, those topics that I was never exposed to. And that made the light bulb go off in my brain. Was like, hey, this is really interesting to me. Maybe I want to pivot and go towards the finance route. That's what I did. I made a soft transition at the company I was currently working at and went over to the corporate finance group, started doing analysis on very large capital investment projects and scratching that finance itch. But it wasn't quite all the way towards what I wanted to do. Something was still missing. And during that time, I was very heavily involved in the FIRE movement. My wife and I were saving and investing heavily. We're like, we're going to get out of these corporate jobs and we're going to retire in our mid-40s and do whatever we want. And that was the mission. Then COVID hit and people my age were dying of this weird virus. And I was like, maybe I should get busy living instead of get busy dying, right? That really clued me in. Okay, rather than wait till retirement to defer happiness and get towards that full financial independence, maybe I can just pivot into something that I enjoy that isn't a cubicle job that I really just don't like. Got in touch with some great planners, like Cody Garrett was one example. And he was very generous with his time. He mentored me. He showed me how he does planning. And as soon as I got off that call, I was like, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to launch my own firm and I'm going to help people and feel better about it than just helping corporations. And obviously, being an entrepreneur, you have control over your time and your schedule and your location, which attracted me to the FIRE movement in the first place. I think about it like an early escape hatch towards the FIRE lifestyle without being fully financially independent.
So, Allen, I'm glad we finally got you on the show. And I think your example of why you wanted to reach FIRE and what you did afterwards, that's really what the movement is about. I think a lot of outside people get it wrong, right? They're talking about the numbers and the math. But look, you created this whole services that you are very passionate about, financial planning and learning all about what you needed to do to be an entrepreneur, to serve the people you wanted to serve. You would have never been able to do that had you continued in the job that you were in and you were able to make that pivot. So I want people to see that it's so valuable to have the freedom of your time to do the things that you really want to do and to explore. Also, I have to mention, you're not just a flat fee, advice only financial planner. You are one of the most vocal and you're all over LinkedIn with a lot of education. Your website has a lot of education and you're bringing a lot of value. So I'm so glad you made it into this world.
Me too. It's been a breath of fresh air from the corporate world. So my only regret is I didn't do it 10 years earlier.
Well, that's okay. But a CFA is a more unique educational experience, very high level, almost graduate degree. Maybe help people understand what that is, why you did that first, because it sounds like you went from MBA to CFA to CFP. And that's an interesting sort of backpedal into face-to-face planning with people. And that transition I find interesting. Let's help people understand what a CFA is and that credential.
Yeah, good question. So CFA is a chartered financial analyst. Basically, it's, like you said, a graduate level equivalent into investing. It's a very deep dive into investment management, portfolio management. The CFP, it's been described as an inch deep and a mile wide. The CFA is an inch wide and a mile deep. So very deep into the investment management. The reason I got it first was through my corporate roles. I was already 2 of the 3 levels through the CFA. So it was a professional development thing for my corporate jobs. And like I said, almost finished it out. And then once I decided I wanted to launch my own firm, I was like, okay, I'll just take the last level and I'll come out of the gate with a respectable credential. I couldn't get the CFP yet because I didn't have the applied experience hours. That's why it got delayed until later. I needed to collect all those experience hours for CFP.
Yeah, do you find that those 2 degrees or certifications are good synergy with each other?
I think they are. I think that I've got a deeper understanding of portfolio management than what the CFP curriculum provides. But I will say that the CFA is pretty much overkill for client-facing work. It's designed for folks who are managing institutional portfolios and back office portfolio manager work. If somebody's just getting into the field, would not recommend going the CFA route. CFP is by far more applicable to face-to-face client interactions and quote-unquote typical financial planning.
Because you're a wealth manager, not just a planner, advice only. Did it help you with the wealth management piece and taking on management of assets for your clients?
It did, absolutely. And it made me feel a lot more comfortable with that aspect of the business, being that I'd gone already through the CFA curriculum. Basically, anything that I would encounter had already been covered and I was already had that expertise.
Is there a difference between financial planning, wealth management, financial advising? Do you have a distinction between those?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a movement in the financial planning world for title protection, where the idea is that not everyone could call themselves a financial advisor. Right now, any insurance salesman, literally anybody could call themselves a financial advisor. But title protection is moving towards having more specifics, guardrails around that. Financial planner is, I think, used more for folks who do the quote unquote planning, not just asset management. Wealth management, that's tossed around a lot. You'll hear wealth management from firms that all they do is stick clients into a portfolio and never talk to them again. Or maybe they talk to them once a year and flap their gums about market updates, not really doing any planning. So it's really difficult from the client side, from the consumer side, to understand who does what and who has expertise in what. You really need to dig a bit deeper than just the title.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. Because, Bill, when you were specifically asking him about the wealth management part, how did you distinguish? You recently started working with a planner. Were you looking for someone with a certain title, like a wealth manager specifically? Since I hear both of those words, I don't know that most people really know the difference.
Yeah, we did a whole episode on this, and my planner actually does have a CFA. He started with that and institutional high net worth management, and he felt himself restricted by the institution, and he didn't want the restrictions of this is how you have to construct your portfolios, deal with clients, and there was a salesy thing, and he was reading up on stuff, and he had a particular way that he wanted to deal with portfolios, and as people know, that's a risk parity approach, but we've talked about that. At any rate, there's a lot of nuances to this, and the important thing I think people need to know is you need to really understand the language of financial planning and advice before you dive into this. People have a checkbox approach to this. Are they fiduciary? Are they this? Are they that? But checking boxes doesn't get you the person that aligns with your values, your intentions, your goals, and you're shaking hands with somebody. It's almost like a marriage where you're locking arms. You're going to be with them for 20 or 30 years, especially in retirement planning. It's a long-term relationship. Just like getting married, you got to look into it. And when they're not taking care of, say, 100, 200 clients, and it's focused on 50 clients where you actually have access on a regular basis, and they're not trying to just garner AUM or build their assets under management. The folks like yourself, Andy Panko, Cody Garrett, Brian Minogue, that's my planner, Andy Cole, all of these folks are independent RIAs where they are focused on you, 100% fiduciary. And actually, you may be friends with Aubrey Williams because we know that you're on the board of Income Lab. And that's a software that people have not traditionally known much about. And Aubrey is a big fan. And why would he be a fan of this? Because there's risk-based guardrails that a lot of planners are incorporating now as far as portfolio management and paycheck creation. Because having a hard number, a ceiling where, you can spend more at this portfolio amount and you need to make adjustments, and they may be small when your portfolio goes down to this number, in some ways backward looking and not Monte Carlo forward looking with this percent chance of success that's so vague and harder to understand. Give us a little education on Income Lab, would you?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan, evangelist, you could say, about Income Lab and risk-based guardrails in general. Like you said, it's just a more clear way for folks to understand what their spending capacity is in retirement as they turn their investments into retirement paychecks. The old way was relying on the 4% rule, for example, but that's engineered for a worst case scenario. By definition, almost every scenario that plays out will be better than worst case. So 4% rule, you're designing a plan for underspending, and you're going to miss out on the retirement that you could have had, because as your portfolio grows, you're not taking advantage of that growth and that additional spending capacity. Now, risk-based guardrails will adjust spending upward if you break through the upper guardrail, which is a portfolio value. So in advance, people know, here's my spending capacity today based on my current portfolio value, and here's where the upper and lower guardrails are set to portfolio values. If my nest egg grows to X, then I'm eligible for a spending increase in retirement, and I'll take larger distributions safely. And if my portfolio decreases to Y, I'll have to tighten the belt a little bit, but it's probably going to be larger than the 4% withdrawals that I would have started out taking originally early in retirement. And I think that those larger distributions, they're more impactful for people early in retirement when they're healthy and they're mobile and they can travel to Italy and they can go to Rome and climb the steps of the Colosseum, right? Versus underspending during those critical high energy years. And then it turns out you're 85 years old and you got $5 million that you're never going to spend. You missed out on all those experiences in early retirement. So yeah, big fan of guardrails. It's foundational to how we do retirement income planning.
Yeah, I have a shout out there too. Since you're on the board, I know which assets are back tested there. And there's a few in there that folks of us would need in order to establish our guardrails based on our portfolio construction, and gold being one of them, managed futures being one of them. There are long-term treasuries in there, But I would urge you to consider adding the historical data on a few other assets so that folks of us like myself can more robustly and accurately use Income Lab.
I'll bubble it up to the top.
Thank you for giving us a summary there. And Aubrey did a wonderful job in showing it to us live during the recording when he was on. And I'll include a link in the show notes that kind of references where Aubrey is showing that. Before we get into family, because that's what we're going to be mainly focusing on today, giving to family, give me the backstory of the 7 Saturdays name of your firm.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I firmly believe that choosing a name is the worst part of starting a financial planning firm. I agonized over this probably way too long. I had a list of 10 different names and I was sending out polls to people. Which one do you like better? Ultimately, I knew I didn't want last name financial. I wanted something a little bit more unique than that. I didn't have a cool enough last name to justify that. But really settled on 7 Saturdays Financial because it encapsulates what we do as retirement planning. In retirement, every day is a Saturday because you get to choose what you do and when you do it. So that's where the 7 Saturdays name comes from. But really, it has to do with freedom and control over your time. And I think it plays well into the retirement planning that we do.
Yeah, I heard your wife calls it 7 Mondays or 7 Tuesdays because you actually end up working on the weekend. So she doesn't experience it that way yet.
Yeah, that's a good pickup. There's a lot of Saturdays and Sundays when I spring out of bed, nobody else is awake. So I run down to the computer and start working because I just love it. And she's like, 7 Mondays at it again. But it doesn't feel like work. When it's something you own and you have total control over, like I said, it doesn't feel like work. And if I was working in a corporate job and they were like, hey, you have to work on Saturday or Sunday, I'd be like, here's my 2 weeks. I'm out of here. This is BS. But when it's something you control and it's your passion, it just feels totally different.
Yeah, that is the magic right there. How amazing would it be if we could bottle this up and give a little bit of that to our family? So on this family giving conversation, I'd love to start with the basics because we've gotten questions in our Facebook group and a lot of people will ask, how much can I give? Do I need to pay taxes on it? What's the limit? So start with the basics of what the exclusion limit is to gifting to family or non-charities and take us from there. And then we will step through a few of the other ideas and strategies that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the numbers that people often fixate on is $19,000 a year. And that is the annual exclusion amount for how much you can give to any individual without filing any forms with the IRS. You don't have to pay any tax, right? Oftentimes people think that $19,000 per recipient is a hard limit. Anything above that and you'll be paying gift tax on it. And we don't really understand gift tax, but we know it's a tax and it's unpleasant. So we're going to limit our giving to $19,000 a year. Not entirely accurate. So $19,000 is actually a paperwork threshold, not a tax threshold. And if you give more than $19,000 to a single individual in a given year, any amount over that $19,000, you have to claim on Form 709, which is a federal gift tax filing form. And it doesn't trigger any tax bill. Let's say you give $20,000 to your grandchild. That extra $1,000, you would file Form 709 and it would go against your lifetime estate and gift exemption. What that is $15 million per person currently that you can either give during your lifetime or you can leave in your estate and it's exempt from federal estate tax. So that $1,000 that goes over the $19,000, you claim on Form 709 and it reduces your $15 million lifetime exemption from $15 million down to almost $15 million. And most people, 99.99% of people, are not going to give away or die with $15 million during their lifetime. So it's really a non-issue. It's a slight inconvenience to file the paperwork with the IRS, but it's not a tax threshold. It's a paperwork threshold.
Yeah, but the people need to understand that the states have different estate plan limits. So they may end up paying estate taxes on a lower amount depending on the state you live in, right?
That's correct. And for most states, it's a estate exemption. Let's say you give away $10 million during your lifetime and you leave $1 million in your estate. In most states, what they're going to see is that $1 million. They're not going to go back and they're not going to look at the $10 million that you gave away. So a little bit of different interplay there with the federal and the state systems, but that's a good pickup. People need to check what does their estate tax look like in their state? What is the inheritance tax in their state? Some states still have an inheritance tax. Playing around those different systems and planning around those is something that's important as well.
Yeah, Jackie wanted to know whether the common misconceptions or mistakes, because people get a little nervous about giving, and we have a lot of boomer hoarders in the world too that don't want to transfer wealth as readily because of fear of death, disability, long-term care, and stuff like that. Are there other misunderstandings with regards to gifting and why people don't necessarily do it with warm hands while they're alive, while they can see the direct impact of it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of psychology and a lot of ingrained habits that are behind that. It's the same psychology that triggers underspending in retirement. Oh, well, I'm not going to spend anywhere near what I could because I might need it for long-term care, or I might need it if the market crashes. I don't want to have to cut my spending in the future. A lot of times that stems from not having an actual plan, just kind of winging it. Of course, without a plan, you're just guessing at what you can spend. And the natural default for savers is, well, when I get to retirement, I'm just not going to spend money. That plan has a 100% success rate if you define success as not running out of money, right? You're going to be leaving behind potentially millions of dollars and you're missing out on the retirement that you could have had. But also to frame it in the gifting perspective, you're missing out on seeing the impacts of that excess spending capacity on your family. So let's say you don't plan on spending what you could, but your kids got young kids and they're paying for daycare expenses and maybe they are trying to scrape together a down payment on a house. If you've got extra spending capacity, you could help them out much earlier in life and give with a warm hand rather than leaving them a pile of money when they're 60 years old, which for most people, they're already set for retirement. They've already been through the hard stuff. They've already accumulated their own retirement nest egg. So for these families who are just continuing to roll down these assets, the next generation receives them when they're in their 60s. They don't really need it. It's just gravy on top of the plan. They don't end up spending it. And then they leave it to their kids who receive it in their 60s. And it's like, what is it for? What's the purpose of this money? Is it going to help the world in any way? Is it going to upgrade your lifestyle in any way? Are you going to have experiences with your family, memorable vacations? There's a lot of things that money can do other than sit there and just accumulate.
What's interesting about planners I talk to is they consider it a big win when they get somebody to say, you know what, let's take the family to Disney World. Let's take the family to Italy. Let's help with college education. Instead of siloed wealth, a fluid generational wealth transfer. And what you're doing is allowing the younger generation to save more of their own money in a way because you're offloading them from all the balls in the air that are overwhelming and you're taking away overwhelm. And for me, what I learned is you don't necessarily need to transfer money, which transfers lifestyle and potentially lifestyle inflation. You need to transfer wisdom and stewardship as to how to manage money so that you can transfer wealth that builds their wealth so that they can potentially retire earlier than you did, especially as a late starter. And that's my focus is, okay, let's transfer wealth that they can learn to manage. And then I'm taking my sons with my wife to Norway for 2 weeks. And it's a great way to spend money. We're really looking forward to it. And at the same token, we're filling up their Roths and HSAs so that they can focus on their 401k and they can have a balanced accumulation. None of this was done for us. We were not educated on this. One of the biggest challenges you have with these risk-based guardrails and say, you know what, you can do this. Let's do this. Let me encourage you to say it's okay. And that to me is where you would get your real dopamine hit when you get somebody to live life sooner, as opposed to, I have a lot of family members that are in their 80s, sitting home, watching TV, sitting on a bunch of wealth. And I've tried to have encouraging talks with them, say, you know what, we don't need your money. We're in our 60s. We've reached it. At this point in time, make a big difference. Are our kids in your estate plan? Okay, great. Let me tell you about the ways that you can make a difference now. But there's a lot of reticence to do this.
Allen, I have a question about along the lines of what Bill was talking about. Do you have clients that are concerned that giving their kids or grandkids or whoever money while they're still living, that they're enabling them to be dependent on that money, or that they're not teaching them the right lessons by just giving them something versus making them work for it? Do you get a lot of that?
It does happen from time to time, and it's a valid concern. I think it varies from family to family based on their own dynamics and the maturity level of that next generation. A lot of times when folks have children who are in their 30s or later. They've got it together by that point. They're established. They've got a home. They've got maybe one or two kids that are young and in daycare. Their careers are on track. So there's less concern about them going on spring break and blowing it all in Cabo or something, right? So
I think I'm seeing that now. My daughter's 30, Bill's kids are 26.
You bet.
Yeah, so we're able to see how they behave with money and able to spend time with them to teach them some of these things. So I'm certainly feeling better. And it sounds like Bill is too, that they are going to be responsible for the money. And I don't have that worry. But I think, yeah, when they're spring break age, sometimes it's a different story.
Yeah, for sure. I think, Bill, you hit the nail on the head with it doesn't have to be cash. You can pay for a vacation with a family like Norway, like you talked about. If they can't afford it, or if it would stretch them beyond a comfortable limit and you've got extra spending capacity, the decision becomes, when I'm later in life, would I rather have an extra $50,000 in my investment account, or would I rather have those memories of a badass trip with my family that we would have never experienced otherwise? There's a book called Die with Zero that's actually on my bookshelf, that blue one right there. The title of it is the worst part, Die with Zero, right? Once you flip past the title, it gets better. But it's an excellent book. It really challenged some of my thinking, and some clients have really appreciated it. But one of the concepts in there is memory dividends. You buy an investment and it produces dividends, right? But if you make an investment in your family's experiences and a vacation like Norway, there's memory dividends. You look back on that and you smile, or you talk about it at Thanksgiving and everybody has a good laugh about whatever happened. So I think that's really what it's all about, is creating those memories with family.
What's interesting too is people talk about having kids with skin in the game. For example, my son's on the school calendar. He works in a school district and they have spring break every year. And we took him to New York for just having fun. His girlfriend had never been to New York, but they bought their plane tickets. They paid for a couple of nights of hotel because they got there before us. As soon as we got there, we took care of the rest because they couldn't afford to do that. So they had their skin in the game and they still got this experience, and we got this experience with them. So here I am going on spring break again, and it's fabulous. We're not going to Cabo. One thing we need to know now, because we need to dig into the details, is there's a lot of accounts out there, and they have advantages and disadvantages and opportunities and concerns. I'll just list them real quickly and we'll try and get through them. There's the UTMA, the UGMA, there's the 503A, there's the 529, there's a taxable brokerage, and there's a custodial Roth. Let's try and go through these because there's so many opportunities people forget about, and the accounts can get imposing or overwhelming. Can you take us through those?
Yeah, there's a lot of options out there. And like you said, it can get confusing for people. I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is that the accounts that have the greater tax efficiency are going to be the ones that are less flexible. It's much like when you're saving for your own retirement and you've got the choice between a 401k or a taxable brokerage account, right? The taxable brokerage doesn't have the tax advantages like a 401k, but it's ultimate flexibility. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that trade-off. When it comes to which accounts to save in for kids, one of the other factors is the maturity level and when do you want them to have full access to the money. A popular strategy for folks is saving in a taxable brokerage account for their child, but keeping it in the parent's name so that they have control over when it goes to the child. If they're saving in an UTMA or an UGMA account, depending on the state, that account becomes the child's at age 18 or 21, whenever they reach the age of majority. So you really have no control over when that account becomes the child's. That's one of the trade-offs there between taxable brokerage and UTMA, UGMA. There is the Trump accounts, which are coming out July 5th of 2026, and that's a whole rabbit hole to get down. But for folks who have a newborn born in 2024 or later, there's a free $1,000 from the Treasury. That's a no-brainer to open up that account. But whether they want to super fund that account and seed it for the next generation, there are trade-offs there. And we've got an article about the Trump accounts on our site as well that folks can check out and get all the details. 529s, obviously restricted for college use. There are ways to get it out. If you don't use it for college, a couple of hoops to jump through. But again, the 529 is like a Roth for education. So what you're getting in tax benefit, you're losing some flexibility there.
Just a little clarification. Weren't there changes this past year what you can use the 529? Let's say they didn't want to go to college. They can use it for K through 12 now. I feel like the 529s are getting better and more generous in what they can cover. Are you seeing that with the 529?
Yeah, they're definitely getting better with the laws that have been passed in the last couple of years. As you talked about, K through 12 is now eligible. And then there's also the pressure relief valve where, let's say you have a bunch of leftover money and they're done with college, you can roll up to $35,000 into a Roth IRA for that beneficiary. There's some stipulations. The account has to have been open for 15 years and a couple other things, but there is that as well. They're becoming more flexible as time goes on, which is a great benefit.
Yeah, we did a whole episode on them. But one more thing I want to tell folks is that if you have the wealth and the capacity, you can front load those with 5 years of donations. So ultimately, at $19,000, if you have two parents, or anybody else can do it if you have a social security number, you have $38,000 times 5 or $190,000 that you can front load. And if you're able to do that, just let it ride. And you'll have college education taken care of, and potentially this Roth rollover. So it becomes not only a broad-based educational account, it becomes a retirement account. And what's really cool to me is you can talk about gift stacking. And tell us a little about gift stacking, because if you dovetail a 503A and a 529, you can supercharge your kids' wealth building.
Yeah, you sure can. And you hit the nail on the head with being able to super fund the 529 with 5 years of contributions in 1 year and then two spouses, that doubles it. You could use that same strategy with cash gifts or gifts of stock, appreciated securities, et cetera. If there's two of you in a couple and your child is married, you could actually move 19,000 times 4 to the next generation, because you give to your child, you give to the child's spouse, and then your spouse does the same thing. So that's $76,000 that could be transferred outside of a 529, just cash gift or taxable brokerage. There's different ways to do it, and you just have to see what makes sense for your situation.
So, Allen, can you clarify the difference between a taxable brokerage and the UTMA or UGMA? And let me clarify what those acronyms stand for, so make sure I get it right. UTMA is the Universal Transfer to Minors Act, and the UGA is the Universal Gift to Minors Act. Did I get that right?
I think that's right. And the main difference between the UTMA and the UGMA, I believe, has to do with state when it becomes the child's at the age of majority. So that can dictate whatever account you want to choose based on when it transfers to the child and becomes theirs. Taxable brokerage, like I mentioned, if you keep the taxable brokerage in the parent's name and just earmark it for a future gift to the child, then you have total flexibility on when you transfer it to them. So it might be at age 25, it might be at age 30, whereas the UTMA, UGMA path, that by law becomes the child's at 18 or 21.
And I really like that idea. Thank you for clarifying. So I did look up, it is Uniform Transfer of Minors Act. But I like the idea of the brokerage account and having it in the parent's name, because when they're in that teenage years, young 20s, that's a really iffy time. It was an iffy time for me and my daughter. And I don't know if I would have been quite comfortable, but I got to see whether or not I was ready to move it. And one other little trick that I like to do is when you have a brokerage account, you can nickname the accounts, right? So you could still put the nickname in the name of your child just to make sure that it's earmarked, to make it simple.
The other things that are important here too is there's caps on what you can donate to these accounts. I believe the 503A, it's $5,000 a year, and that is outside of the gifting of the $19,000 for, say, so it increases the gifting you can do where you don't have to file the form, so to speak, to $24,000 if you're gifting to the Trump account and a 529 or somewhere else. The UTMAs and UGMAs also $5,000 a year.
You can put whatever you want in the UTMAs, UGMAs. There's no annual cap on that. But one thing to point out about the 530A or the Trump accounts is under the law, the way it's currently written, it actually doesn't qualify for the $19,000 exclusion. So 529s are technically a gift of future interest because the child can't use the dollars today. They're going to use them in the future for college expenses, but there's a carve out that makes them eligible to fall under that 19,000 paperwork threshold. As the law is currently written, every dollar that you would contribute to a Trump account, you have to file 709 because it's not eligible for the $19,000 annual exclusion. So that's a wrinkle that they're probably going to fix before July 6th of 2026. But as the way the law is currently written, it's not eligible for that 19,000. So every dollar that you would give goes against your $15 million exemption. And just to note, that's per person. So if you're a married couple, 30 million might not be a big deal for most folks. So they're probably not going to leave that much behind.
And then with the UTMA and UGMA, if you can put anything you want in there, does it function as a taxable brokerage where there's tax drag along the way? Is there some tax protection in there? The tax treatment of all these is a little bit different. For example, the Trump account, the 503A, is functionally a retirement account, which is like an IRA. You can't unlock it until 18. But the UTMAs and the UGMAs, aren't they taxable along the way?
That's correct. And there's another nuance here, which is the kiddie tax. In order to prevent parents from just transferring all their assets to their kids and not paying taxes on the income on those assets, there's what's called the kiddie tax. So if a child owns either a taxable brokerage or an UTMA, UGMA account, up to the first, I think this year is $2,700 of taxable income is taxed at the child's rate, which is obviously going to be very low. It's probably 0%. But anything above that threshold is going to be taxed at the parent's rate. That applies until they're 18 or 24 if they're going to be a full-time student and they're a dependent. So that's another landmine to watch out for is the kiddie tax.
That gets a little tricky. And just so people don't think that we're talking about two different accounts, 530A is the IRS code section. So that's what we just refer to it as. But just so you know, we're not talking about two separate accounts. The Trump accounts are the 530A accounts.
I wanted to understand this kiddie tax for a while. I'm going to try and walk through it one more time. So UTMA and UGMA, you can give what you want. It's taxable along the way, but over $2,700, the kids are essentially paying taxes at your marginal rate along the way, if I understand it correctly. That's not necessarily true for a 529 or a 503A, but it is true for UTMA, UGMA, and a taxable brokerage when you're giving to minors under 18, correct?
That's correct. And the Trump accounts, the 530A, technically functions like an IRA. So any income that's thrown off is just sheltered or tax deferred, I guess you would say. So you're not taxed on the year that it's received. You're taxed when you withdraw it. 529 is similar, but it's more like a Roth for education. So any of that income is, again, not going to be taxed when you receive it. It's also not going to be taxed when you withdraw it, as long as it's for qualified education expenses. But yeah, the UTMA, UGMA, and taxable brokerage, if they're in the child's name, they're subject to that kiddie tax. That's something to watch out for. That's going to be like interest, dividends, any income that's spit off along the way inside those accounts.
Also with the Trump account, you can contribute up to the age of 18, but no more after that, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. At age 18, it becomes essentially an IRA that's in the child's name. And one important feature to point out is that very similar to an UTMA, UGMA account, they have full control over it at that point in time. It's their account. It's no longer sheltered from poor choices. So
if they pull it out there, they have a 10% penalty, don't they, after that?
Yeah, they do. So reasoning with a teenager, they might not care about that and withdraw the entire thing and, again, go to Cabo. So there is a risk there. And it's hard to predict at age 3 what they're going to be like when they're 18. So that's a potential risk of the 530A accounts.
Let's try and run some numbers because it's really impressive. So say you max out a Trump account, whether there's $5,000 a year. Maybe it's automatically invested in the S&P 500. I don't know. But then you also max out other accounts, say they're custodial Roth, which we haven't talked about yet. If you max out a Trump account for 18 years in the S&P 500, what are you looking at age 60 when they retire? And it's an impressive number.
It is an impressive number. So we built a calculator on our website to show how all the different variables play out. But just for a newborn who gets $5,000 contributed to their account every year, at age 18, obviously it turns into an IRA, and then there's a Roth conversion window. So after the kiddie tax no longer applies, because if they're doing Roth conversions in those years where they're subject to kiddie tax, then watch out for the parent's tax rate, right? So you want to wait till the kiddie tax no longer applies, convert the account to Roth over multiple years. This is an opportunity, not a recommendation. And if they've got a bunch of dollars in Roth at age 26, say the conversions stop, just assuming a 7% annual return, you're talking about $3.3 million in a Roth IRA at age 60.
Wow. That's powerful.
Yeah, compound growth is powerful no matter what account you are using. And having that unique opportunity where you have added money, almost all of these, you could take advantage of that compounding. But since you mentioned Roth, we could call it a custodial Roth, but it's just a regular Roth that's in the name of a minor, correct?
That's correct. And a custodial Roth differs from a 530A or a Trump account. A custodial Roth does require earned income to be eligible to contribute. So you're probably going to have a hard time justifying contributions for a newborn, right? If they're not actually earning money. That's one of those things where you could physically contribute to a newborn's Roth IRA. You could go to Fidelity and open up one and contribute the max to it. If you get audited, that's going to be a very uncomfortable conversation with the IRS about how you justified the income for those contributions. You would probably have to withdraw it, plus penalties, plus income tax on it. So would not recommend that. Definitely stay above board with it. But if your child does have earned income, which household chores do not qualify, but any income from an outside source does qualify for that. So if they get a part-time job when they're 14 years old, right? Or they're raking leaves for a neighbor and they're 12 or 10, those are justifiable jobs. And as long as you have documentation of that earned income, date it was performed, who the child did it for, how much they received, that's documentation of actual earned income, and that justifies contributions to a custodial Roth. For example, my daughter's 9. A couple of years ago, she took some surveys online for kids' TV shows like, hey, here's a concept cartoon and here's another one. Which one do you like better and why? An hour-long survey on a webcam or whatever. And I was sitting right there. She earned a couple $100s from that. And I made sure to save the documentation from that. And I contributed to her Roth IRA. So she's got 50 plus years of tax-free compounding there.
Yeah, I wish I would have known to do that. My daughter did a little modeling when she was a baby, and certainly that would be an acceptable one. These days with social media and things like that, it's not far-fetched. And I think probably when it comes to audit, if they've got a modest amount like your kid has and what my daughter had, a couple $100, 500, even 1,000, I wouldn't worry so much about that. You got it legit, you document it like you said. I think the people that are trying to say, oh yeah, my kid is just brilliant and they're making $8,000 every single year consistently, just looking cute.
Yeah, and their income happens to match exactly the annual cap for a Roth contribution that year, right?
Yeah, a little shady stuff, but there's some legit things out there, like my daughter who was modeling and your daughter that was doing the surveys. Don't be scared to make sure you keep the documentation and invest in your kids' Roth. Because again, the example that you gave with the compound growth, apply that to scale, but it can be pretty impressive when you start that young.
Yeah, we have to recognize that you have to have earned income there. You can employ your kids, I think, after age 7 when it really becomes viable. But with the UGMA, the Trump, the 529, and the taxable brokerage, they do not have to have earned income. And so there's lots of opportunity there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about a couple of things because you can gift outside of these accounts and people forget about this too. And there's the HSA too, which we didn't talk about. That's Jackie's favorite. And what's interesting there for us is when my kids are in their low income years, earning between $50,000 and $60,000, they have the standard deduction along with, say, an HSA deduction. There's all of a sudden $20,000 of deductions. And then you have a window between the ceiling of the capital gains rate where you can actually transfer low basis shares to them. They sell them, put them in their HSA and their Roth, functionally tax-free, which is really interesting. You've turned your kids into a charity. But once their incomes get high enough, then selling those shares that you give them generates taxes. But there's an interesting way with that hole in the capital gains bracket to offload shares, just like the kids were a charity and they sell them, correct?
That's correct. And the cost basis does transfer over to the next generation, whoever you gift it to. But to your point, if they're outside of the kiddie tax window and let's say they're 24 years old and they're working their first job, $50,000, $60,000, they're going to have some room probably in the 0% dividend and capital gains. There's an opportunity there. For example, you could gift them $19,000 worth of shares, not file any paperwork, and then they sell it. They realize all those gains. And if they're in the 0% rate, then 0% long-term capital gains dividend bracket, then there's not a penny of tax due. Whereas if you would have cashed it out yourself, if you're in a higher bracket, you would have a tax bill. So there's an opportunity there. One of the other opportunities getting outside of the downstream gifting is upstream gifting. If you've got older parents and you've got some massive appreciated shares, let's say you paid $1 for Apple and now it's worth $100,000, you could gift it upstream to your parents. And whenever they pass away, guess what? There's a step up in basis. You receive your shares back, and now the cost basis is $100,000 instead of $1. There's stipulations there, of course. They have to stay alive at least a year. The $100,000 example, you would be filing a Form 709 for the gift over 19,000, but check into the laws that apply to you. But that's another gifting opportunity as well.
Interesting. I'd never heard about upstream gifting.
When I was doing my CFP, they called it the deathbed transfer or something. And that's why they make you wait at least a year.
If we transfer 100,000 and they have to live a year, is anybody paying tax on that if they're in that low ceiling cap gains bracket?
So the tax treatment on that, let's say you gift those shares to your parents, you would have to file the Form 709 as a gift for anything above 19,000, but again, no tax due, just a paperwork issue. They receive $100,000 of Apple stock. The cost basis is still $1. Any income that's thrown off of that, they're going to have to pay taxes on at their rate. But the real advantage is when they pass away and you presumably inherit, hopefully they've got you on the account or the will, and you inherit the assets back, then you get the step up in basis. And now your cost basis is $100,000 instead of $1, and you can sell it with no tax impact, just wiping that capital gain away.
That is really cool. I like that one.
Yeah, here's another key, Alan. You need to make sure that you are named as a beneficiary.
Yeah, you got to trust your parents then too, don't you?
A few little nuances, but done correctly. That's why in the beginning I was talking about we got some unique little strategies here, some creative things that you might want to think about. You may not have heard anywhere else.
Well, you're washing out capital gains like with QCDs or qualified charitable distributions, the upstream gifting, the downstream gifting. If you have low basis shares, there are cool ways to distribute them. Let's jump into a couple of things that are outside of the traditional gifting. People need to realize, too, that if there are healthcare expenses and educational expenses, you can pay for those directly, and that is not incurred in a tax issue, right?
Yeah, that's 100% right. That's a way around the $19,000 exclusion. So if your child has education bills, you can pay any amount directly to the university or the educational institution, and it's not a gift to your child. It's just paying their bills for them. So medical and education both apply for that.
And that doesn't get subtracted from your federal cap, right? That's outside of that as well?
Yeah, it's just like it never happened from a tax perspective, from a gift perspective, because you're paying directly.
That's interesting. But you can't pay for their student loans, correct?
That's correct. That's considered a gift, and that would be subject to the 19,000 or the paperwork threshold above that.
Okay. So you can gift multiple accounts like this, but you end up in the paperwork threshold. And that's the important thing to recognize, that all you're doing is subtracting from a federal cap of 15 million, and you're never going to get there. So if you have this excess wealth and you don't want to wait till their 60s, you're not limited by 19,000. That's the key. And you have all these opportunities, healthcare, education, all the accounts we've talked about, and you don't have to just do $19,000. But obviously this is a retirement budget item, and people don't think about it. It's like, okay, let's stress test our portfolio with Roth contributions, HSA contributions, so that they can focus on their 401k and see, okay, can we do that? And then what happens is if the market crashes and you can't do it, okay, that's buffer. You just don't do it that year, and it's spending that you can do for yourself. There's one more cool thing I wanted to mention for filling up their Roth and their HSA. I call it the tax efficient 401k fungible donation, where if you give them cash and they look at it as income, and it may be above the $19,000, essentially take that amount of money and put it into their 401k. So you can't directly contribute to a 401k, but in my mind, you can indirectly contribute to their 401k.
Yeah, exactly. You're just replacing the dollars that they're losing from payroll because their payroll withholding is much higher. But hey, I'm just going to put this off to the side. You put it in your bank account, and it's like you never made those contributions, essentially. To your point, dollars are fungible. A dollar in this account is the same as a dollar in that account. It's just all in how you think about it.
So, Alan, what about doing some kind of matching so that the kids do have more skin in the game and they understand that the more they do, you are going to contribute more, which may incentivize them in a better way. What do you think about trying to match with adult kids where they're able to put money in their retirement account?
Yeah, we have talked about strategies like that with clients as well. If they do want to have some skin in the game and not just, hey, here's a pile of cash, no strings attached. So I think it does reinforce those savings habits for the next generation. They get those habits established. And that's a great strategy is we're going to match you. You contribute 10% to your 401k and we're going to give you cash for the other 10%. And you're actually contributing 20%. You're only paying for half of it. One other thing to keep in mind is paying for college, for example. You can save in 529s and you could fund college that way, or you can just pay for college from cash flow. And one of the strategies that my wife and I have kicked around, we've still got a while, 9 years until we have to worry about college for our oldest. But we talked about the interesting idea of, hey, our kids are going to get student loans and they're going to think that they're on the hook for 100% of college. So they're not going to pick underwater basket weaving as a degree because guess what? I'm going to get out of school and I'm going to have all these student loans that I need to generate income. I need to pick something that's worth the investment. So they get through college, they pay for it with student loans, also incentivizes them to not fail out of college, right? Like, hey, it's not just mom and dad's money. This is my money that I'm actually taking debt on for. So I better be responsible and get through it. And then let's say they finish through college, they've got this pile of student loans and all of a sudden the student loan fairy comes and pays them off, right? AKA mom and dad. So after they've already demonstrated that responsibility and they've gotten through college on their own and essentially wipe away those student loans as well. That's another idea that we had. So there's a lot of different ways to tackle it and depends on what your individual family values are and what you want to transfer to that next generation.
Since he was talking about student loans, let me ask this real quick. For all these accounts that we mentioned, I'm also curious about, do you know how they impact when you're filling out the FAFSA form in order to get financial aid for school? Is that something that parents need to consider?
Yeah, that is important. I know student assets, they ding you more on the FAFSA than parent assets. The UTMA, UGMA would be less preferable than a taxable brokerage account in the parent's name. Additionally, the 530A Trump account, it's technically a retirement account, so it doesn't affect the child at all when it comes to FAFSA on potential aid, things like that. So definitely another nuance along with the other 15 that we've talked about to keep in mind.
I think if it's a retirement account, period, they don't count that on the FAFSA at all. So if it was a Roth or like you said, the 530A or the Trump account, that's something that people just need to look at as another consideration if they are thinking about these very large amounts by the time the kid is ready for school, how that's going to be looked at if they plan to fill out the FAFSA or looking for financial aid.
Yeah, when grandparents do the 529s, you can put yourself as the beneficiary of it. And then the kid goes through the FAFSA, they don't see those assets, and you can pay their tuition bills thereafter. The grandparent bonus, and this is a 2 to 3% bonus according to the FAFSA calculations. But there are ways to pay less in taxes and not be seen and get more in student loans by having assets that aren't in the students' names, as we've just talked about. The other thing that's interesting to me, because of inflation and real estate values, is things like helping with house down payments or writing them from your own assets alone. Can you talk about those two issues a little bit?
Yeah, like a big lump sum gift to a child for a down payment. That is a possibility. It would probably exceed the $19,000 a year, which is, again, not a big deal. File a form, and as long as you're not going to give away or leave behind $15 million a person, it's really a non-issue. So that's a great way to help seed the down payment and get them started with a house that they might not otherwise be able to afford, accumulating that large down payment. One thing to keep in mind is that lenders often do ask, like, where did you get the down payment? Is it a gift? And then the child has to disclose that for the loan application.
You can write the mortgage yourself, per se, where it's essentially an investment for you. They're paying you back.
That's correct. Yeah. And there is a minimum rate that you have to charge. It's published by the IRS. It is below market rate for mortgages. So this is where the advantage comes in. You can offer your child a lower mortgage, a lower rate than what the market rate is. As long as you stay at that minimum or above on the interest rate, then it's not considered a gift to them. If you go below and you give them a 0% interest rate or something, then the difference between that 0% and the minimum rate would be considered a gift from you to them, like imputed interest. The other thing to keep in mind is that the interest that you get back is going to be taxable income to you. So have to account for that on your tax return.
Yeah, it essentially becomes an income stream for you and enables the child to pay less in mortgage interest overall. These days, I think the first-time homeowner is in their mid-30s or so. It used to be in the 20s, but with the doubling of real estate values after COVID, we're going to have a generation of renters that are never able to save a down payment.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really speaks to why gifting to your kids earlier in life makes a lot of sense. If you leave them a huge inheritance when they're 60, they might still be renters and they'd be like, thanks. I could have been living in a house that I owned for the last 30 years instead of getting this pile of money dropped in my lap when I'm 60. But if you help them out with that down payment or whatever you want to do earlier in life, you can help give them that leg up and maybe they can get into home ownership when they're in their 30s instead of missing out and missing the boat.
And you do have to educate them, transfer wisdom, and trust them, because transferring wealth and not money, you don't want to see it go to lifestyle inflation that they can't afford. And you put them into the late starter domain more easily. So you do have to educate them prior to transferring wealth. Our prior guest, Julia Meyer, said generational wealth without generational wisdom is wasted. And people forget the wisdom part. One way we're doing that, and this is an opportunity for all independent RIAs, is our kids, we're requiring them, at least initially as they get up and running, using Monarch, for example, as their income tracking and budget tracking app, to sit down and meet with our advisor. We pay for it and say, this is a benefit of being a part of our family, but it's also a requirement so that you can get your budget set up and there's no emotional, shameful load about not wanting to talk to you about, oh, I did this, I did that. But they do have accountability, so they functionally become like a financial therapist and say, okay, this is what you're doing, this is what you can do. I suggest that you save 10, 15%, let's push that up, and this is where it's going. And then they don't have to talk to you as the parent, and it really offloads the emotional baggage that kids might have in dealing with money with their parents. And hopefully it becomes more transparent and you're all working together, because one of the great things about FI is I've had much healthier money conversations with my parents and all around, because they recognize that you don't need it. So let's talk about it. My mother recently had some issues paying too many taxes, and all of a sudden the door opened and I'm fully aware of what's going on with her and her money. And she was with an AUM advisor, and I'm like, okay, let's see if we can work on this. And it wasn't invested properly, paying too many taxes. And she was able to not shut down and listen to the whole thing and digest it and say, okay, there may be better ways to do this. That's where being transparent with money, take away the taboo, cross-generationally, intergenerationally, just talk about it. Because why silo your estate plan without considering the estate plan of, say, your parents, where the two estate plans can talk to each other and work well together? I call trusts often mistrusts, because people put in all these clauses, and if 25, 30, 35, you get some money here or there, and you're just trying to control them from the grave, when you should be encouraging them and passing on wisdom while alive, because trust can become unnecessary except for privacy reasons or for particular assets. So I don't know how you feel about it, but this is where I think advisors also play a huge role for helping families get educated. And for late starters, for example, where kids have been mentored, maybe a little inappropriately, like my kids, you have somebody that's going to help you as a parent make sure that your kids are good stewards. Is that something you're incorporating into your practice?
Yeah, we do talk to clients' children and make sure that they're on the right path, transferring that education. And a lot of times the family dynamics and just the family history can cause people to tune out, even though the advice that they're getting or the wisdom that they're receiving is sound and is 100% true. So that even happens with spouses, right? Maybe one spouse is a DIYer and they're telling their other spouse, like, yeah, we're good for retirement, everything's fine. But it takes that third party, that professional, saying the same thing in a different voice for them to really hone in and understand it. Very applicable to either parents giving their children advice or even children giving their parents advice. A lot of times it's hard to take advice from someone who you used to change their diapers.
So true. We covered a lot, Alan. You're a wealth of knowledge, and we know that you've been talking about this stuff, gifting to family. There's so many ways to do it as we covered it. You might have to listen to this one again. But the whole idea is when people are in their 20s and 30s, they're in that bottleneck, okay? They have a lot going on. Some of these ideas about giving the money in smart ways, whether you want to match it or whatever. You got all these accounts to choose from. So this has been a good episode that I love, and I think hopefully spark a lot of ideas for people. But Alan, where can people find you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, so if they want to learn more, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, as you mentioned, Jackie. Just search Allen Mueller, that's Mueller, and you'll see 7 Saturdays Financial. For more gifting, tax content, retirement planning, etc., you can go to our website, which is the number 7 SaturdaysFinancial.com. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the homepage, there's a newsletter sign up. So we're putting out a newsletter twice a month, just covers education on all those topics that we talked about. So that's the best places for us to hang out. I have kicked around the idea of starting a YouTube channel, but it's on the back burner. So we'll see if that happens.
Education, in my mind, is the best marketing. It's really a pull, not a push. And if you provide a lot of material that say, oh, this guy's speaking to me, or this woman's speaking to me, is helping me with my knowledge base, and it's essentially free out into the world, I want to work with him because I want more of this. And I really am impressed that a lot of advisors like yourself do put out really quality content. So I would encourage you on your YouTube channel. You're pretty looking, you got a nice hairstyle. People are going to want to watch that.
Yeah. And like you said, the content marketing, there's a million different ways to market yourself in front of clients. But when I started out, I always had this fear like, oh my God, I'm going to have to take the big broker approach and go knock on doors and cold call people. And that's not me. I'm not going to do that. So luckily, every single client, every single prospect that I've been in front of has been inbound. So either social media content or being listed on these different directories. And in this day and age, you can pick the marketing style that suits your personality. So it's really the golden age to be a small firm right now.
I have a funny story to close the show. I just thought of it. Because you talk about cold calls, and LinkedIn is an opportunity for a cold call. I recently got pinged by a 24-year-old, sort of say, hey, I see you're a doctor. Let me see if I can help you out. Da, 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 da. And then I took his name and the firm he was working for. I did a deep dive, looked at the ADV2. It was one of these dark side, massive firms with massive AUM, layer on layer of fees. And I was like, I'm going to do this. And so I pinged him back and I said, thank you so much for reaching out. I just want to let you know that this is who you're working for. You're at the beginning of your career. You have a lot of opportunity to do good in this world. And maybe you would consider, according to your values or whatever, being an independent RIA or working for a firm like that and exit the dark side. I never heard back from him. You never know if I just nudged him and said, you're working for one of the bad guys in this industry. Maybe you should think about this a little more at age 24.
Well, good for you for really planting the seed and maybe keeping him up at night a little bit.
Yeah, I'll say, okay, that guy was right. At any rate, this has been a great conversation. We hope that you and the Catching Up to FI late starter world, when you do reach FI or even before then, little amounts compound to a lot when your kids or young people in your lives are in their 20s. Are you investing for yourself or are you investing for them? And letting them have the money earlier in life and compound for them over their lifetimes makes a huge difference. A gift of $100 becomes thousands of dollars. So we've learned a lot about this today. Jackie, any final words?
Yeah, for our late starters, it is never too late to start. It's better late than never. And it's always the right time to catch up to FI together.
We'll see you next week.
So, Bill, as you know, we cannot do this show without our amazing staff and the people that help us put this on. And our editor is Fritz Brizard. We love them and they keep us going.
Yeah, Jackie, this show wouldn't have the quality it has without our folks, our peeps. And we'd also like to give you a few calls to action for the show. We love our community and we hope you love us back. If you would like to support the show and our mission to help late starters, you can do that at Buy Me a Coffee, which is a platform that allows you to make a donation. The link is in the show notes and on the website.
Check out the show notes for resources mentioned in today's show. Also, head on over to our website at catchinguptofi.com and check out our vetted resources, partners, and affiliates for discounts and their services because we love sharing great deals.
Please share the show with others and head on over to our Facebook community to help us grow. If you prefer video, head on over to YouTube and watch the show there. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Catching Up to FI. We would appreciate it if you could also leave us a 5-star review to help our message reach others.
And while we are financial educators that love to teach, remember that our content is for general education and information purposes only. We are not providing financial, legal, or tax advice. Always do your own research or consult a professional before making important decisions.
So, Jackie, we'll see our audience next time on Catching Up to FI. Cheers.